First of all, I'd like to say that we're very privileged today to have an interview with Mrs. Lyndon B. Johnson, whom I'm sure that you all have recognized. And I'd like to say, Mrs. Johnson, what a very charming person you are. You really are.
Thank you so much, Patsy.
And, you know, as a Southerner myself, I want to say that maybe that's because you're from Texas. Do you think so?
Well, I also have a claim, a very strong claim on Alabama, because my mother and father were both from there. And something of a claim on Georgia, because I have visited in Raven Gap, and I've been to Georgia many times.
Have you ever been to Columbus?
No.
Will you please put us on your schedule?
I'd like to.
First of all, I'd like to ask a question. I know you've been asked many, many times, but how did you end up with the tag Ladybird?
If I had my life to live over, I'd manage not to do it.
Oh, I like that.
My nurse nicknamed that when I was about 2 months old, and it is stuck.
And another thing I wanted to ask you, I know that I read that you are, well, I know that you're a very close-knit family, and that in all this traveling, how do you manage to tie in all these functions with your family life?
It's sort of a matter of knowing what is the real GOLD, the real gold of life, you know, and that's the happiest part of life is raising your children. I am now at the point where Linda Bird at 19 is off in college, very much involved with education and other interests. Lucy is still at home, I'm glad to say. She is almost 16, and she's at National Cathedral. And we do have we managed to get some happy times together. When Lyndon goes to a stag party, that's the signal for us to stay home and do homework.
I see. Tell me, what would be, say, an average day in the life of the Vice President's wife?
There's great variety in it. It's anything from, one thing I do quite regularly, from January until June, every Tuesday, is to go to the Senate Ladies Red Cross Unit, where we roll bandages or knit or sew. All the wives of the senators, and I'm the presiding officer just because of Lyndon's job. And then the day is likely to include a Spanish class, that happens twice a week, or going to, having in my home a group of home economics teachers who are having a regional meeting there. Yesterday afternoon there were two youngsters who had won a national baking contest, and as part of the prize they got to see Washington and what made their government tick. And so just because I think it's grand that they've achieved something and that they're getting to see a part of their country as a prize, I was happy to show them what I know about it.
I see. I'd like to ask you too, what do you do as a family when you get a little free time? What do you do strictly on your own?
The happiest thing that we do on our own is to spend at our ranch in Texas, which is it's close to Stonewall. Very, very rural, beautiful rolling country. We raise white-faced Herefords. All of us, Lyndon, Lucy, Linda, I, and Beagle, our dog, like to ride around and see the deer, jump the fences, and
I see.
We like to go fishing, and we like to survey the crops and all the cattle who Lyndon knows by name, practically.
Do you get to watch much television?
Not as much as I'd like. I personally am determined to take out enough time to watch.
Well, I would think you would have to, wouldn't you, being in the television business yourself? That's most interesting. I bet a lot of people in the South don't know that you're a major stockholder in a television company. What all do you have to do in that line of duties? It's in Austin, right?
Yes, KTBC in Austin. Well, I am at home at the station about once a month for several days. continuous contact with the manager and the personnel. And then, when I'm gone, every week I receive a very thorough digest of what has happened in the week, from salesman's reports to the bank balances to pertinent correspondence to all the checks to sign.
I see. Another question I wanted to ask you before we finish here. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Mrs. Kennedy.
Well, let me tell you a sweet and happy little incident that I think mothers especially will understand. Once when there was going to be a state dinner, which London and I couldn't go. We were going to be out of town. She very thoughtfully invited our two daughters, who were at that time just 15 and 18. And my youngest daughter wrote back. We thought it was probably a mistake because of their age. And so Lucy Baines wrote back, "Thank you very much. I am very thrilled, but I think I had best disclose my age." And the secretary promptly replied, "Yes, we know, but we'd love to have you stand in for your mother and father." And they went, greatly dressed up, greatly thrilled, and they telephoned me about it. And a few days later, I got a letter from Mrs. Kennedy, nice and handwritten note saying, "I know that all mothers like to know how their children behave when they're not around, and I want you to know that yours were very poised and very sweet and very interested." And that was just one little sweet human aspect.
I see. We have one last question, and that's I'd like to ask you what your children find is the most exciting part about being the children of the Vice President and his wife of the United States.
Linda, our oldest daughter, has a natural bent toward history and government. I think she can call more of the senators by their first names. She knows them all perhaps better than I do. It's been a great deal to her because it's broadened her horizons about government and more recently about the world.
I see. We've been very privileged today to have a personal interview with Mrs. Lyndon B. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson, on our behalf, I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Patsy. It's been a pleasure.